HTC's first flagship of the year, the One M9, maybe wasn't the huge success they were hoping for, so they're trying again with a new formula and a new device called the HTC One A9. It's about the same size as the HTC One M9, but you wouldn't really be able to tell these two devices are related just by looking at them. That's because the A9 looks a bit like an iPhone. We've got a really nicely polished aerospace grade aluminum body, and it's much rounder, so it does actually feel dramatically like an iPhone 6. We do also have a circular 13 megapixel camera on the back and a circular two-tone LED flash also on the back, which by themselves wouldn't be a huge deal, but do add to the iPhone similarities. It's also worth pointing out that HTC hasn't had the best luck with cameras lately, and the 13 megapixel camera on the back of the A9 is not amazing. It's not bad, it's certainly a little better than what we got on the HTC One M9, but it's not the improvement I was hoping for. Even though the camera isn't the best we've ever seen, it does have some pretty cool photo modes. You can edit it pretty extensively after the fact. There is also a pro mode that allows you to really get into your settings and mess with them, also shoot in RAW, and the hyperlapse mode, which shoots hyperlapses. It's sort of commonplace these days, but it's always nice to have. Part of what makes the A9 so grippable and handy is the smaller screen. We've got a 5-inch AMOLED display here running at 1080p, and longtime HTC fans will know it's been a while since HTC has used an AMOLED screen. It's probably not since the days of the Droid Incredible. Regardless, it's a really well-saturated display, and even if it's not your cup of tea, you can switch into an sRGB mode for slightly less attractive but more accurate colors. HTC's also sort of looking at the A9 as a flagship replacement to the M9, which feels a little bit weird, and that's because of the chipset that's running inside. It's got one of Qualcomm's Snapdragon 617 chips. Now, that's a brand new bit of silicon, and it is an octa-core chipset. 4 of the cores are clocked at 1.5 gigahertz, while another 4 are clocked at 1.2, and in general, we haven't seen a huge decrease in performance. You're not going to feel that this is much slower than an M9 if you have one already. Swiping through apps and opening up games and playing them are generally pretty solid. We did see a bit of a dip in graphical performance though, so you're not going to be able to push really heavy games like, for example, Asphalt 8 or Dead Trigger 2 as strongly as you could have on earlier devices. The version we're getting in the US also has 3 gigabytes of RAM and 32 gigabytes of internal storage, and since HTC is one of those holdouts that keeps putting micro SD card slots in their phones, you also have the option to add up to 2 terabytes of additional storage. There's a whole lot we could say about Android Marshmallow, so much so that we wrote an entire review about it. But the broad strokes are really impressive, and I think you're going to like them a lot. My favorite feature is Now on Tap, which basically adds contextual information in the form of cards whenever you hold down on the home button. To get a phone like this as thin as it is, HTC did have to cut a few corners, and we're sort of seeing that in the battery. It's got a pretty small 2150 milliamp hour battery, which is definitely not class leading, but thanks to improvements that we got in Android 6.0 Marshmallow, actually lasts a bit longer than you think it did. In our standard Engadget video rundown test, it hung in there for about 8 hours and 45 minutes, so definitely not the best, but far from the worst. It is with a heavy heart that I have to report HTC has given the dual front-facing boom sound speakers the boot. What it has instead is one single speaker etched into the bottom of the phone, and it is no replacement for the speakers we used to have. I love those boom sound speakers, and to not have them on a quote-unquote flagship from HTC is really kind of disappointing. The story does get a little better when you've got headphones on. We've got a built-in amplifier to sort of give your tracks more oomph, plus Dolby Audio for a more expansive soundstage. We're starting to see a lot of fingerprint sensors in Android phones, and thankfully the one we've got under this 5-inch screen is actually really nice. It's very quick and very accurate, and you can sort of slot down your finger in any direction and have it detect that you are in fact who you are. HTC insists that the A9 is a flagship phone and a worthy successor to the M9. I don't know if I completely agree. It's certainly not a bad phone. The build quality is great. The chipset inside is more powerful than you think, and the software is probably the best I've seen out of HTC in a long time. But I still don't think this is enough for HTC to get out of its rut. It's just not groundbreaking enough. Still, at $399 unlocked, it's not a bad deal for a phone and stacks up pretty well to some of the other phones we've seen in that price range.